pause just for a moment. Before you scroll, before you tell yourself you're tired of trying, before you decide this is just another voice that won't reach you, pause here with me. Put one hand on your heart. Feel that? The part of you that's still breathing has not given up. There are days when hope doesn't disappear loudly. It fades quietly. It slips out when you're doing the dishes, when you wake up already exhausted, when you whisper, "I don't know how much longer I can do this." If that feels familiar, you are not broken. You are human, and you are listening now for a reason. You may believe hope is something you must chase, earn, or deserve, but hope is not distant because you failed. It feels far away because you've been carrying too much alone. Your body knows it, your heart knows it, and that is why you are here, because something in you is ready to be reminded. Let me say this gently but clearly. Nothing has gone wrong with your life. The pain you feel is not proof of defeat. It is a signal asking for kindness. When you stop judging the ache and begin listening to it, the healing conversation can finally begin. Think of the mornings when you avoid the mirror, the nights when your body feels heavy and your thoughts won't slow down, the times you've told yourself, "I should be stronger by now." That voice is not truth. It is habit. And habits can be softened one loving thought at a time. Here is the first reminder, though I won't explain it yet. Your body is always on your side, even when it hurts, especially then. When you learn how to listen instead of fight, something surprising happens. Relief arrives before answers do. The second reminder may feel unfamiliar. You are allowed to pause without quitting. Rest is not failure. Stillness is not surrender. When you stop forcing yourself forward, life finds a new way to meet you. Not through pressure, but through support. There is a quiet cost to ignoring this. Every day you push past your own tenderness, the message sinks deeper, "I don't matter." And that belief settles into the body. But today, simply by staying here, you interrupt that pattern. You choose a new message. Listen closely now. Your thoughts are listening too. The words you repeat about your body, your future, your worth are instructions. Repetition is powerful. That's why despair feels convincing. But it also means peace can be practiced into place. Here is another reminder you may have forgotten. You do not heal by becoming someone else. You heal by returning to yourself. The self that existed before the criticism, before the fear, before the belief that love had to be earned through suffering. Imagine this. Tomorrow morning you wake up and your first thought is not dread, but neutrality. Then slowly kindness. That shift does not come from fixing everything. It comes from choosing one thought that feels slightly better and staying with it until your nervous system believes you. If you're tempted to think, "I've tried affirmations before and they didn't work," pause. You didn't fail. You simply stopped before the words reached your cells. Healing listens for consistency, not perfection. Return daily, even briefly, especially briefly. Here is the reminder that changes everything. Hope is not a feeling, it is a practice. It is what happens when you stop arguing with life and begin cooperating with it. When you speak to yourself as someone worth saving. And now the last reminder, the one you may need most. This is not the end of your story. This moment, this heaviness, this uncertainty is a chapter, not a conclusion. Life has not finished with you. Your breath proves it. So stay, breathe, let these words land gently. You don't have to believe everything yet. Just believe enough to remain open. Pause here with me. Hope does not rush. It returns quietly the moment you stop pushing it away. I wish to speak to you first about a truth that few people ever examine closely, yet it determines whether hope remains alive or quietly disappears over the years. Hope does not fade because a person lacks strength. It fades because that strength has been applied without a clear direction. A powerful engine, when disconnected from its steering mechanism, does not move forward. It spins, overheats, and eventually shuts down. The human mind operates in much the same manner. Most men and women who feel weary, discouraged, or quietly hopeless are not weak. On the contrary, they are often the strongest people you will ever meet. They rise each morning. They fulfill obligations. They endure disappointment. They persist far longer than others expect. Yet inside, something slowly drains away. That something is not energy. It is aim. When a person lives without a clearly defined purpose, effort becomes exhausting. Each task feels heavier than the last. Progress feels uncertain. The mind begins to ask dangerous questions such as, what is the point? Or why continue? These questions do not arise from failure. They arise from directionless persistence. I have studied thousands of lives, men and women, who achieved extraordinary success and far more who never did. I can say without hesitation that those who lost hope early did not lack ability, education, or opportunity. They lacked a definite chief aim. They drifted, and drifting, more than any misfortune, is what steals decades from a human life. Drifting is subtle. It does not announce itself loudly. It looks like staying busy. It looks like responsibility. It looks like reacting to circumstances instead of shaping them. A drifting person often appears respectable and hardworking, yet inside they feel strangely unfulfilled. Hope cannot thrive in such conditions because hope requires a destination. Consider Henry Ford, who faced ridicule, bankruptcy, and repeated failure before his success materialized. Had he lacked hope? No. But his hope did not survive because of optimism alone. It survived because his purpose was fixed. Each setback was measured against his aim, not against comfort. Without that aim, discouragement would have ended his efforts long before success arrived. The same is true of Thomas Edison, who endured thousands of unsuccessful experiments. Lesser men called those attempts failures. Edison did not. Why? Because his mind was anchored to a purpose so definite that disappointment had no power to uproot it. His hope was sustained by direction. Contrast this with the millions who work hard for years, yet feel increasingly drained. They are not lazy, they are not incapable, they are simply moving without a compass. Every year spent that way subtracts something from the spirit. 10 years can pass, then 20, sometimes 30, not lost through catastrophe, but through aimlessness. Here is a truth that may surprise you. Exhaustion of the soul comes not from work, but from work without meaning. The mind requires a reason to endure discomfort. Without it, even small obstacles feel overwhelming. With it, even great hardships become bearable. Many people mistakenly believe they must first feel hopeful before they can choose a direction. This is false. Hope follows aim, not the other way around. The moment a person commits to a purpose, even imperfectly, something remarkable happens within the mind. Energy reorganizes, attention sharpens, the future regains form. Hope begins to stir again, quietly but surely. You need not know exactly how your aim will be achieved. That knowledge comes later. What matters now is choosing a direction that feels honest and worthy of your effort. A direction that allows your mind to say, this is why I continue. When a person does this, others notice. They may not know why, but they sense something different. The individual speaks with more certainty. Decisions come more quickly. Confidence replaces hesitation. Even adversity seems to treat them differently because they no longer interpret difficulty as a signal to stop. This is how years are saved. A man who spends 10 years drifting may believe life was unfair to him. In truth, those 10 years were spent without aim. Another man, equally challenged, but guided by purpose, compresses decades of learning into a few focused years. I urge you to reflect honestly, not on what you have failed to do, but on what you have failed to decide. Where has your effort been going without a destination? Where have you been strong without direction? Begin simply. Write your aim. Speak it daily. Let it shape your thoughts. Let it organize your effort. Do not wait for certainty. Certainty follows commitment. Repeat this affirmation until it takes root within you. I possess a definite purpose, and my mind is organizing itself to achieve it. Say it calmly. Say it daily. Say it especially when hope feels distant. Understand this well. Hope does not vanish because life is difficult. It vanishes when effort loses meaning. Restore meaning, and hope returns not as emotion, but as quiet resolve. This single reminder, if grasped and applied, can save you 10 years of wandering, 20 years of doubt, and even 30 years of unfulfilled effort. Direction is not a luxury. It is the foundation upon which hope survives. And once hope has direction, it no longer fades quietly. It endures. I wish now to direct your attention to a second reminder that determines whether hope survives difficulty or quietly collapses under it. This reminder is not about circumstance, luck, or even opportunity. It concerns something far more decisive, the thoughts you permit to occupy your mind each day, for defeat is never born in circumstance. It is born in thought long before it ever appears as a condition. Every human experience begins as a mental picture. Long before a man fails outwardly, he has surrendered inwardly. Long before hope disappears from his conduct, it has been weakened by repeated patterns of thinking that go unchallenged. The tragedy is that most people do not realize this process is taking place. They believe life has defeated them, when in truth they have accepted defeat in their own minds. I have observed repeatedly that men and women do not lose hope because events overwhelm them. They lose hope because they allow fear, doubt, and indecision to settle in the mind as habitual companions. These thoughts are subtle. They do not always shout. Often they whisper. They sound reasonable. They disguise themselves as caution, realism, or humility. Yet their effect is always the same. They drain confidence and paralyze action. Consider how this occurs. A disappointment arises. Instead of being examined and dismissed, it is replayed. The mind begins to repeat statements such as, "Perhaps I am not capable," or "This always happens to me," or "I should not expect too much." Each repetition sinks deeper into the subconscious mind. Soon, these thoughts no longer feel like opinions. They feel like facts. The subconscious mind makes no distinction between truth and repetition. Whatever is impressed upon it consistently becomes a directive. Thus, a person who repeatedly entertains thoughts of limitation eventually behaves in ways that confirm those thoughts. Hope weakens, not because opportunity disappears, but because expectancy has been poisoned. The world's most successful individuals understood this principle instinctively or through hard experience. Andrew Carnegie, for example, endured criticism and resistance long before his achievements were recognized, yet he guarded his thoughts with discipline. He did not permit temporary setbacks to define his expectations. His thinking remained constructive even when circumstances were uncertain. Contrast this with the average individual who allows the mind to dwell upon fear when conditions grow difficult. Fear multiplies itself. One fearful thought invites another. Soon, the mind becomes a workshop producing defeat in abundance. This is how years are lost. Not through one great failure, but through thousands of small, unchecked thoughts that gradually shape belief. Understand this clearly. The mind always moves in the direction of its dominant thoughts. If those thoughts are hopeful, action follows. If those thoughts are fearful, retreat follows. Circumstance merely reflects the decision already made within. Many people attempt to restore hope by changing outer conditions, seeking new environments, new relationships, or new opportunities. While these changes may help temporarily, they cannot compensate for undisciplined thinking. A man who carries defeat in his thoughts will recreate it wherever he goes. This is why the control of thought is the greatest time saver known to man. One who learns to discipline his thinking early in life avoids decades of repeated disappointment. Another who never learns this skill may spend 30 years repeating the same failures under different names. You must understand that disciplined thinking does not mean denying difficulty. It means refusing to grant difficulty the power of final judgment. A disciplined thinker acknowledges obstacles without allowing them to dictate expectation. He asks, "What does this teach me?" rather than, "Why does this always happen?" As this habit forms, something remarkable occurs. Others begin to notice. They observe calm where panic once appeared. They see decisiveness where hesitation once ruled. They sense reliability. Such a person attracts opportunity not by chance, but by mental posture. To train the mind requires repetition. Occasional positive thoughts are insufficient. The subconscious responds only to that which is habitual. Therefore, you must deliberately replace fearful thoughts the moment they appear, not with argument, but with assertion. Here is an affirmation to be spoken daily, and especially in moments of discouragement. My mind is under my control. I choose thoughts that strengthen courage, confidence, and constructive action. Say it aloud. Say it with calm authority. Say it until the subconscious accepts it as instruction. This practice alone can save 20 years of a person's life, years otherwise wasted, reacting emotionally to conditions that could have been mastered mentally. For when thought is mastered, circumstance follows. Hope is not sustained by chance. It is sustained by mental discipline. The man who learns this truth early possesses an advantage greater than wealth, education, or talent. He possesses command of himself, and when a man commands his thoughts, hope no longer fades quietly. It stands firm because it is no longer dependent on circumstance, but anchored in understanding. I wish now to bring before you a third reminder, one that is commonly misunderstood, yet it determines whether hope becomes a permanent companion or a visitor that comes and goes. This reminder concerns faith, not faith as blind belief, not faith as wishful thinking, but faith as a trained confidence in one's own mind and its power to direct life. Most people lose hope because they believe faith should feel certain before action is taken. They wait to feel reassured. They wait to feel confident. They wait until fear disappears. In waiting, they waste years. Faith, as I have observed it in every great achiever, is not an emotion that precedes action. It is a mental state that is developed through action taken in spite of uncertainty. Faith is formed when a man decides to trust his own thinking long enough to act upon it repeatedly. Each time he acts without retreat, something is impressed upon the subconscious mind. That impression says, "I can be relied upon." Over time, this repeated self-trust becomes confidence. Confidence then replaces doubt. This is the true origin of faith. Look carefully at the lives of men such as Theodore Roosevelt, who faced physical weakness and public ridicule early in life. He did not wait to feel fearless before acting. He acted first, repeatedly, until fear no longer commanded him. His faith was not inherited. It was constructed, thought by thought, decision by decision. Many men mistake faith for optimism. Optimism fluctuates with mood and circumstance. Faith does not. Faith is rooted in the decision to persist regardless of immediate evidence. It is the refusal to abandon one's aim simply because reassurance has not yet appeared. Hope disappears in those who demand proof before belief. Faith restores hope in those who believe before proof. This distinction alone accounts for the difference between lives of achievement and lives of quiet regret. The subconscious mind responds powerfully to faith because faith carries emotional conviction When a man speaks with faith, even in private, his words carry authority. They do not plead, they instruct. The subconscious accepts such instructions and begins to align behavior accordingly. This is why affirmations, when spoken without conviction, fail. Words alone are insufficient. Faith must be cultivated by repeating statements that align with action. A man who declares confidence while retreating from difficulty undermines his own faith. A man who speaks confidence and acts accordingly reinforces it. As faith strengthens, others perceive it immediately. They may not articulate it, but they sense it. They trust the individual. They seek his opinion. They follow his lead. Faith expresses itself in posture, tone, and decision-making. It creates leadership without effort. I have seen men waste 30 years waiting to feel ready. They believed faith would arrive first. It never did. I have also seen men with little education and fewer advantages rise quickly because they acted while uncertain. Faith met them along the way. This is how years are saved. Faith compresses time. It eliminates hesitation, second-guessing, and retreat. A man who trusts his own mind moves decisively. He learns faster. He corrects course without self-condemnation. Progress accelerates. Faith also dissolves fear, but not by force. Fear fades when it is no longer obeyed. Each act taken in spite of fear weakens fear's authority. Eventually, fear no longer feels convincing. Hope returns naturally when fear loses command. Here is an affirmation designed not merely to comfort, but to instruct the subconscious mind. I have faith in my ability to think, decide, and act with courage. Each action strengthens my confidence and directs my life toward achievement. Speak this affirmation slowly. Speak it with intention. Then act in alignment with it, even in small ways. The smallest consistent action taken in faith is more powerful than grand plans postponed by doubt. Understand this well. Faith is not something you wait for. It is something you build. Each day you act without retreat. You lay another stone in its foundation. Over time, that foundation becomes unshakable. When faith is established, hope no longer depends on favorable conditions. It rests on self-trust. And self-trust, once developed, cannot be taken from you by circumstance. This third reminder, if practiced, can save decades otherwise lost to hesitation. For the man who trains faith in his own mind no longer asks, "Can I?" He asks, "How shall I proceed?" And that question always leads forward. I wish now to bring before you a fourth reminder, one that separates those who merely hope from those who ultimately arrive. This reminder concerns persistence not as blind stubbornness, not as endless toil without thought, but as the steady refusal to surrender one's purpose under the pressure of temporary defeat. Hope survives only where persistence is understood and practiced. Most men do not fail because they lack ability. They fail because they stop too soon. I have seen this pattern repeated countless times. A man advances with enthusiasm for a period, encounters resistance, meets disappointment, and then concludes that circumstances have spoken the final word. In that moment, hope collapses, not because success was impossible, but because persistence was abandoned. Persistence is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It works quietly, day after day, through continued effort guided by purpose. It is persistence that turns failure into instruction and disappointment into discipline. Without it, even the most brilliant plan dissolves under pressure. You must understand this clearly. The majority of defeats occur one step before victory. This is not a poetic phrase. It is a fact established through observation. Men quit when results are delayed, unaware that delay is often the final test of worthiness. Hope disappears at precisely the moment when persistence is most needed. Consider the career of Abraham Lincoln, who suffered repeated political defeat, personal tragedy, and public ridicule. Had he interpreted those experiences as final judgments, history would never have known his leadership. His persistence did not eliminate hardship. It rendered hardship powerless to stop him. Persistence is sustained by a definite purpose and reinforced by faith. Without these, it becomes mere endurance. With them, it becomes unstoppable momentum. Each time you persist where you once would have retreated, you strengthen a mental habit that compounds over time. This compounding effect is what saves years, sometimes decades of effort. A persistent individual does not restart repeatedly. He continues, he refines, he adjusts. While others abandon one pursuit after another, he remains anchored to a single direction long enough for mastery to form. You may believe persistence requires extraordinary willpower. It does not. It requires emotional discipline, the refusal to dramatize temporary defeat, the refusal to identify self-worth with immediate results, the ability to say, "This has not worked yet," instead of "This will never work." Observe how others respond to a persistent individual. They begin to treat him differently. They respect his steadiness. They rely upon him. Opportunities appear not because he seeks them, but because others trust his consistency. Persistence creates reputation, and reputation attracts cooperation. Most people lose hope because they expect persistence to feel encouraging. Often, it does not. Persistence frequently feels dull, repetitive, and lonely. Yet it is precisely during these uninspiring periods that character is formed and success is prepared. I have found that men who master persistence develop an inner calm unknown to others. They are no longer shaken by delay. They no longer interpret obstacles as personal rejection. They understand that progress unfolds according to law, not emotion. Here is an affirmation that trains the subconscious mind toward persistence. I persist with purpose. Temporary defeat strengthens my resolve and sharpens my intelligence. Repeat it when progress feels slow. Repeat it when enthusiasm fades. Repeat it until the mind accepts persistence as natural behavior rather than forced effort. Remember this: persistence is not endless struggle. It is intelligent continuation. It includes rest, reflection, and adjustment, but never surrender of purpose. When purpose remains intact, hope survives. This fourth reminder alone has saved more lives from quiet regret than any other principle I know. For the man who persists does not drift. He advances even when the path is unclear. Hope does not belong to those who wish. It belongs to those who continue. And persistence is how they do. I wish now to place before you the fifth and final reminder, one that brings all the others into harmony, and without which hope cannot remain steady for long. This reminder concerns cooperation with life itself, not surrender, not resignation, but intelligent cooperation with conditions as they exist, while maintaining command over one's purpose and direction. Many people lose hope not because life is harsh, but because they are in constant resistance to it. They fight circumstances instead of understanding them. They exhaust themselves arguing with reality, demanding that life change before they are willing to move forward. In doing so, they waste years, sometimes a lifetime, locked in conflict with conditions they might otherwise have mastered. Life operates according to laws. These laws do not adjust themselves to our moods, complaints, or fears. The man who understands this ceases to resent difficulty. He studies it. He asks what it requires of him in thought, in adjustment, in growth. This shift alone restores hope because it replaces helplessness with intelligence. Cooperation with life begins when one accepts the present moment without labeling it final. Acceptance is not defeat. Acceptance is clarity. It allows the mind to see what is actually happening, rather than what one wishes or fears might be happening. From clarity comes power. Observe the lives of successful men and women, and you will find that none of them demanded ideal conditions before acting. They accepted conditions as raw material. Andrew Carnegie did not wait for wealth to learn leadership. He learned leadership while poor. John D. Rockefeller did not wait for stability to practice discipline. He practiced discipline amid uncertainty. Resistance drains energy. Cooperation restores it. When a man ceases to fight circumstances emotionally, his mind becomes available for strategy. He sees openings where others see walls. He adapts without surrendering aim. This adaptability is not weakness, it is mastery. Many people mistake cooperation for passivity. This is a costly error. Cooperation means aligning one's thoughts and actions with what can be done now, rather than resenting what cannot yet be done. It is the difference between using the wind and cursing it. Those who cooperate with life develop an unmistakable calm. Others notice it. They speak with assurance rather than complaint. They make decisions without bitterness. They attract assistance because people sense they are not at war with themselves or the world. This calm saves years. It prevents the endless cycle of anger, discouragement, and retreat that consumes so many lives. A man who cooperates with life moves steadily forward, even when progress appears slow. He is not delayed by emotional resistance. Cooperation also restores hope by ending the belief that one is being singled out by misfortune. The individual realizes that difficulty is universal, but response is personal. This realization is liberating. It returns responsibility to the one place where it belongs, the mind. Here is an affirmation designed to cultivate cooperation rather than resistance. I work with life, not against it. I accept present conditions as stepping stones toward my definite purpose. Repeat this affirmation when circumstances feel unfair. Repeat it when progress is delayed. Repeat it until your emotional response changes from protest to poise. Understand this: life does not reward rebellion against reality. It rewards intelligent adaptation guided by purpose. The man who learns this early saves decades of unnecessary struggle. The man who never learns it grows old, fighting battles that never needed to be fought. When you cooperate with life, hope ceases to be fragile. It no longer rises and falls with circumstance. It becomes a quiet confidence rooted in understanding. You no longer ask, why is this happening to me? You ask, how shall I use this? That question changes everything. This final reminder completes the structure that preserves hope across a lifetime. Purpose gives direction, thought discipline gives control, faith gives courage. Persistence gives endurance. Cooperation gives peace. Together, they save years, 10, 20, even 30, that might otherwise be lost to confusion, bitterness, and despair. Hope, when built upon these principles, no longer fades quietly. It becomes permanent. I wish to close by remaining with you for a time longer than custom allows, because when hope has been tested, the mind must not be hurried back into the noise of the world. An epilogue is not merely an ending. It is the quiet space in which understanding settles and where decision becomes resolve. If you have followed these reminders with sincerity, you may notice something subtle already taking place. Not excitement, not sudden certainty, but a steadiness that was not present before. This steadiness is the true sign that hope is returning in a durable form. Durable hope does not shout. It does not depend upon favorable news. It rests quietly upon understanding. Most people spend their lives searching for encouragement, believing that hope must be supplied from the outside. They look to events, people, or conditions to reassure them. When reassurance fails to appear, they conclude that hope itself has failed. This is the great misunderstanding that costs men and women decades of productive life. Hope, properly understood, is not a feeling that arrives by chance. It is a condition created deliberately through the alignment of thought, purpose, faith, persistence, and cooperation with life. When these elements are brought into harmony, hope becomes permanent. It no longer flickers with circumstance. It endures. You may now begin to see how many years are lost by those who never learn this truth. 10 years are lost drifting without aim. 20 years are lost reacting emotionally instead of thinking deliberately. 30 years are lost waiting for certainty instead of building faith through action. These losses do not announce themselves. They accumulate quietly, one discouraged day at a time. The man or woman who applies these principles early in life gains an advantage that cannot be measured in money alone. They gain time. Time free from needless anxiety. Time free from repeated failure. Time free from the exhaustion of inner conflict. This reclaimed time becomes the foundation of achievement and peace of mind. As you move forward, understand that there will still be days when circumstances test you. Difficulty does not vanish because understanding has arrived. What vanishes is the belief that difficulty has authority over your destiny. You no longer interpret challenge as rejection, you interpret it as instruction. Others will notice this change before you do. They will sense calm where tension once lived. They will hear conviction where uncertainty once spoke. They will respond differently to you, not because you demand it, but because your mental posture invites confidence. This is one of the quiet rewards of self-mastery. Do not expect perfection. Expect progress. The mind, like the body, strengthens through use. There will be moments when old habits attempt to return, when doubt whispers, when impatience stirs. These moments are not failures. They are reminders to return to the principles you now possess. Return to your purpose when confusion appears. Return to disciplined thought when fear arises. Return to faith when proof is delayed. Return to persistence when effort feels unrewarded. Return to cooperation when resistance tempts you. Each return strengthens the habit of mastery. I urge you not to rush away from this understanding. Repetition is the law through which the subconscious mind is impressed. Read these ideas again, speak the affirmations aloud, act in small ways that align with them. Small actions, repeated consistently, change the direction of a life. Remember that the mind is always listening. Every word you speak inwardly is an instruction. Speak as one who expects to prevail, not because conditions are perfect, but because your thinking is disciplined. There is no greater freedom than the freedom that comes from knowing you can govern your own mind. No circumstance can imprison a person who possesses this knowledge. No delay can discourage one who understands the nature of growth. If you remember nothing else, remember this: hope is not restored by chance. It is restored by choice. The choice to think deliberately, the choice to persist intelligently, the choice to cooperate with life rather than battle it. That choice, once made and practiced, saves years, years that would otherwise be spent in confusion, resentment, and quiet despair. You are not late. You are not behind. You have not failed life. You have simply reached the point where understanding becomes necessary. Carry these reminders with you, not as comfort alone, but as law. Apply them patiently. Trust the process they initiate. In time, you will look back and see clearly that what once felt like the loss of hope was, in truth, the moment you learned how to build it permanently. And that knowledge, once gained, can never be taken from you. I wish to extend this closing further, not by adding new principles, but by deepening your relationship with the ones already placed before you. For understanding alone does not change a life. Understanding, when lived with patience and repetition, becomes wisdom. And wisdom is the force that quietly reshapes destiny. There is a moment in every serious thinker's life when he realizes that hope is not something to be found, but something to be constructed. Until that moment arrives, he believes hope depends upon luck, timing, or the behavior of others. After that moment, he understands that hope is an inner condition governed by law, sustained by discipline, and protected by purpose. You may now be standing at that moment. If so, it is important that you do not romanticize what lies ahead. The disciplined life is not free from hardship. It is free from helplessness. That distinction matters. The man who understands this ceases to ask for life to be easy. He asks instead for the intelligence to meet it effectively. One of the greatest errors ever taught to mankind is the belief that hope must feel pleasant. In truth, hope often begins as determination without enthusiasm. It begins as resolve in the absence of reassurance. It begins when a person says, "I will continue," even while uncertain of outcome. This is why so many people abandon hope prematurely. They expect inspiration to carry them forward. Inspiration is fleeting. Discipline endures. Discipline, once formed, becomes a source of quiet confidence that no circumstance can overthrow. Think carefully about the years you have already lived. Notice how often discouragement did not come from a single event, but from repetition, repeated disappointment, repeated delay, repeated effort without visible reward. What wore you down was not failure, but endurance without understanding. Now you possess understanding. Understanding that aim restores direction. Understanding that thought creates belief. Understanding that faith is trained, not gifted. Understanding that persistence outlasts resistance. Understanding that cooperation with life dissolves struggle. With this understanding comes responsibility. Responsibility not as burden, but as power. For once you see the laws governing hope, you cannot unsee them. You are no longer at the mercy of chance. You are at the helm of your own mind. This is where many people retreat. Responsibility frightens those who have relied on circumstance for explanation. It is easier to believe life is unfair than to accept that one's thinking has been undisciplined. Yet those who accept responsibility gain something invaluable: control. Control does not mean domination over others or events. It means mastery of response, mastery of attention, mastery of inner dialogue. This mastery is what separates the person who saves decades from the person who loses them. You will notice as you practice these principles that time begins to feel different. Days feel fuller. Decisions require less debate. Regret loses its voice. Even when progress is slow, it no longer feels wasted. Each step belongs to a larger direction. Others may not immediately understand what has changed in you. Some may even resist it. A person who no longer complains, no longer drifts, no longer reacts emotionally can be unsettling to those who still do. Do not explain yourself. Let results speak. Remember that every habit of thought you replace saves time. Each fearful reaction replaced by reason saves days. Each decisive action taken instead of delayed saves months. Each persistent effort maintained instead of abandoned saves years. Time is reclaimed not in grand gestures, but in daily discipline. There will be moments when the old voice returns. The voice that says, "Why try?" or "What is the use?" This voice is not an enemy. It is a habit. Habits weaken when they are no longer obeyed. Meet that voice with firmness, not anger. Replace it with instruction. Say, calmly and with authority, "I govern my mind. I choose purpose over drift. I continue, then act." Action is the final seal of belief. If you apply nothing else, apply this. Never allow a day to pass without reinforcing your aim and your faith in your ability to reach it. A few minutes of deliberate thought each day is enough to keep hope alive indefinitely. Understand that hope, once stabilized, becomes more than comfort. It becomes attraction. Opportunity gravitates toward those who expect it intelligently. People offer assistance to those who demonstrate steadiness. Circumstances rearrange themselves around those who refuse to quit. This is not mysticism. It is law. As this extension comes to rest, I want you to see clearly what has truly been offered here. Not encouragement, not inspiration, but a method. A method for conserving the most precious resource you possess, your years. Most people spend their lives learning too late. They understand themselves only after time has passed. You are being offered the chance to reverse that order, to understand now, to live accordingly, to save 10, 20, or 30 years that might otherwise be surrendered to confusion and quiet despair. Do not rush forward from this moment. Carry it with you deliberately. Let your thoughts be fewer and stronger. Let your actions be simpler and firmer. Let your faith be practiced rather than proclaimed. Hope, built this way, does not fade when circumstances darken. It does not depend on applause. It does not ask permission to endure. It stands. And when hope stands, life moves. I wish to add one more extended closing, not to repeat what has already been said, but to anchor it so deeply within you that it becomes part of how you think when no one is listening, when no encouragement is present, and when life tests whether these ideas have truly been accepted. There comes a quiet moment after understanding is gained when a person must decide whether these principles will remain ideas or become law in his life. This decision is rarely dramatic. It does not announce itself. It shows up in ordinary moments when fatigue appears, when doubt whispers, when results lag behind effort. In those moments, a choice is made that determines whether years are saved or lost. Most people fail here, not because they reject truth, but because they treat it casually. They agree with it, admire it, even feel comforted by it, but they do not live it. Living a principle requires repetition until it becomes reflex. Anything less leaves the old habits in command. Understand this. Your mind has been trained for years, perhaps decades, in a certain direction. Drift did not appear overnight. Fear thinking did not develop in a single moment. Therefore, mastery will not appear instantly either. It will appear through steady, intelligent practice. This is not discouraging, it is empowering. It means progress is always within reach. One of the greatest sources of renewed hope is the realization that no single day needs to carry the burden of your entire future. Many people collapse under discouragement because they try to solve life all at once. They demand certainty, reassurance, and visible progress immediately. When these do not appear, they conclude nothing is working. But the disciplined thinker knows something different. He knows that direction matters more than speed. A ship that turns 1 degree toward its destination will arrive eventually, while a faster ship headed nowhere circles endlessly. This understanding alone restores calm to the mind. As you continue applying these reminders, you may notice that your emotional reactions grow quieter. Events that once triggered frustration no longer command your full attention. This is not indifference, it is control. Control born of understanding that no single circumstance has authority over your purpose. Others will begin to respond to you differently. Some will seek your counsel. Others will test you, consciously or not, to see if your steadiness is real. Remain unmoved, not rigid, but grounded. A grounded person does not argue with noise. He continues, you must also be prepared for solitude at times. The disciplined life is often quieter than the drifting life. Noise fades when complaint fades. This quiet is not loneliness, it is clarity. In clarity, the mind becomes efficient. Decisions simplify. Regret weakens. Many people fear this quiet because they associate it with emptiness. In truth, it is fullness without distraction. It is the state in which the mind can finally hear its own direction. Return often to your definite aim. Speak it aloud. Write it. Measure your daily actions against it. When an action does not serve it, release that action without self-criticism. When an action aligns with it, strengthen it through repetition. This simple habit saves more time than any strategy ever devised. Do not concern yourself excessively with how long success takes. Time passes whether you advance or drift. The only question that matters is whether time is working for you or against you. When thought is disciplined and aim is fixed, time becomes an ally. There will be days when enthusiasm is absent. On those days, rely on habit, not feeling. Habit carries you when emotion cannot. This is why persistence must be trained when things are easy so it functions when things are not. You are not required to convince anyone of your direction. Conviction grows strongest in silence. Let your conduct reveal your belief. Let your steadiness speak where words would fail. Remember always, hope is not optimism. Optimism rises and falls. Hope, as you are now learning it, is grounded expectation, supported by action. It does not deny difficulty, it outlasts it. If ever you feel yourself slipping back into old patterns, do not despair. Recognition is power. Each time you notice drift and correct it, you strengthen mastery. Each correction saves time that would otherwise be lost repeating old cycles. This is how lives quietly turn around. Not through dramatic revelation, but through disciplined return to principle. You are not beginning from nothing. You are beginning from awareness. Awareness is the most valuable starting point any person can possess. Carry these principles with seriousness, but not heaviness. They are tools, not burdens. Used daily, they lighten life rather than weigh it down. Hope, built on this foundation, does not need constant encouragement. It becomes self-renewing. It draws strength from understanding rather than emotion. And when hope is self-renewing, a person becomes unstoppable not because life becomes easy, but because he no longer surrenders years to confusion, fear, or drift. That is the true reward of this work, and it is entirely within your reach. I will add one final extension, not as repetition, but as a sealing of everything that has been laid before you. This is the kind of closing that a man returns to years later and recognizes as a quiet turning point, the moment when ideas stopped being merely interesting and began to govern conduct. There is a stage in every person's development when he realizes that life is not chiefly shaped by events, but by interpretation. Two men may encounter the same hardship. One emerges embittered and hopeless. The other emerges disciplined and directed. The difference lies not in circumstance, but in the inner laws each man obeys. Until now, you may have believed that hope was something to be protected from disappointment. In truth, hope must be trained to endure disappointment. Anything untrained collapses under pressure. Steel is forged by heat. Character is forged the same way. What you have been given here is not comfort against adversity, but equipment for it. From this point forward, you must watch yourself carefully, not with criticism, but with authority. Watch how quickly the mind drifts when it is not directed. Watch how easily emotion attempts to substitute itself for reason. Watch how habit tries to reclaim its old territory. This observation is not weakness, it is command. You will discover that the greatest enemy of hope is not failure, but neglect. Neglect of aim, neglect of thought, neglect of daily discipline. No great collapse happens all at once. Lives are lost in inches, not miles. This is why daily alignment matters more than dramatic resolve. A man who realigns himself every day never strays far. A man who waits until crisis arrives to think seriously about direction has already surrendered years. You may now understand why so many people reach the later stages of life with regret they cannot name. They did not fail spectacularly, they simply drifted consistently. Drift is the silent thief of time. From this moment on, drifting is no longer innocent for you because you see it. That is power. When discouragement visits again, as it surely will, do not treat it as an enemy. Treat it as a signal. Discouragement always appears when growth is required. It marks the edge of expansion. Men who retreat there live small lives. Men who persist there change their future. Do not ask yourself whether hope feels strong enough. Ask whether your conduct remains aligned with purpose. Hope follows conduct, not the reverse. One disciplined decision today saves weeks of emotional struggle tomorrow. One persistent action saves months of hesitation. 1 year lived deliberately saves decades of regret. This is not exaggeration, it is arithmetic. As your thinking stabilizes, you will notice a remarkable shift. Life begins to feel less hostile, not because circumstances have softened, but because resistance has ended. You will stop asking life to justify itself. Instead, you will use what it provides. That shift alone restores enormous energy. Energy once spent on resentment becomes available for creation. Energy once wasted on fear becomes available for decision. Energy once lost to doubt becomes available for persistence. This is how hope transforms from feeling into force. People will sense it in you, some will admire it, some will challenge it, some will resent it. None of that matters. You are no longer governed by reaction. You are governed by principle. Principled men and women are rare, not because principles are complex, but because they require discipline. Yet once discipline is established, life simplifies rather than complicates. You will no longer need constant reassurance. You will no longer seek permission to continue. You will no longer wait for ideal conditions. You will move when movement is possible and wait when waiting is intelligent. That balance is wisdom. Let this final truth be the one you carry forward most carefully. Life never withholds hope from those who practice self-command. Hope withdraws only when a person abandons direction, discipline, and faith in his own ability to think. You have not been given motivation here. Motivation fades. You have been given structure. Structure holds. If you live by what you now know, quietly, consistently, without drama, you will one day look back and realize that the moment hope felt far away was the moment you learned how to make it permanent. And that knowledge will have saved you more than years. It will have saved your life's direction. That is the highest economy any human being can achieve. Sit quietly and place yourself in a position of alert calm, for this exercise begins not with action, but with deliberate thought. Close your eyes and review the years that have passed, not with regret, but with honesty. Notice where your energy was scattered, where effort was spent without clear direction, and where you reacted to life instead of choosing your course. Do not condemn yourself for these observations. Condemnation wastes more time than any failure. Instead, allow a firm resolve to form. The remaining years of your life will not be surrendered to drift. Speak inwardly, with authority, that you now choose direction over confusion and purpose over habit. And feel the weight of wasted effort lift as this decision takes shape. Now turn your attention forward and establish a definite aim, even if it appears incomplete. Ask yourself what single purpose, if pursued steadily over the coming years, would make the investment of your life worthwhile. Do not concern yourself with methods yet. Methods evolve, purpose endures. When an answer forms, hold it firmly and speak it as a declaration, not a wish. Then decide upon one small daily action that aligns with this aim and is fully within your control. Commit to performing it regardless of mood or circumstance, understanding that faith is built through action, not emotion. Each time you keep this promise to yourself, confidence replaces doubt and hope regains substance. Finally, prepare your mind for the moments when progress feels slow and discouragement attempts to return. Understand in advance that such moments are signals of growth, not evidence of failure. When they arise, return calmly to your purpose and continue your chosen action without debate. Each morning, reaffirm your command over thought and direction, and each evening, review your conduct without judgment, correcting where necessary. In this way, hope becomes a disciplined practice rather than a fragile feeling. Time once lost to uncertainty is reclaimed, not through force, but through intelligent persistence and self-command. I will close now with a long, deliberate epilogue written not to inspire you momentarily, but to reorient the way you think about your life, your time, and your future. This is meant to be read slowly, perhaps more than once, and returned to in seasons when hope feels distant again. For hope, properly understood, is not something that is possessed once and kept forever without care. It is something that must be governed, just as the mind itself must be governed. There comes a point in every thoughtful person's life when he realizes that time, not money, is the true measure of wealth. Money can be earned again. Opportunities can reappear in altered form. But time, once spent without direction, is gone forever. Most people do not lose their lives in dramatic collapse. They lose them quietly through delay, through indecision, through emotional reaction, through the belief that tomorrow will somehow compensate for a lack of direction today. This is how hope erodes, not through catastrophe, but through neglect. You may now see, perhaps for the first time, that hopelessness is rarely caused by a lack of ability or opportunity. It is caused by disconnection from purpose, from disciplined thought, from faith in one's own capacity to direct life. When these elements are absent, effort becomes exhausting, patience collapses, and time feels heavy. A man may remain busy for decades and yet feel as though his life is slipping through his fingers. This sensation is not imaginary. It is the mind signaling that it is being used without being directed. The most tragic realization a person can reach late in life is not that he failed, but that he never truly decided. Failure at least implies effort aimed somewhere. Drift implies motion without meaning. Drift is the silent destroyer of hope, because it convinces a man that he is trying, when in truth he is merely reacting. Reaction consumes energy. Direction multiplies it. Now that you have been exposed to the principles that govern hope, you are no longer innocent of them. This is not a burden, it is a privilege. From this moment forward, every time you feel discouragement rising, you will know it is not a verdict, it is a signal. It signals the need to return to first principles: purpose, disciplined thought, faith, persistence, and cooperation with life. Each return strengthens mastery. Each correction saves time. It is important that you understand something deeply. Clarity does not remove difficulty. No philosophy worth anything promises a life without obstacles. What clarity does remove is confusion, wasted effort, emotional chaos, and the repeated abandonment of worthy aims. These are the true thieves of time. When they are removed, even hardship becomes productive, because it is no longer meaningless. You may notice, as you begin to live by these ideas, that life does not suddenly become easy. What changes is your relationship to it. You stop demanding that circumstances reassure you before you act. You stop postponing decision until certainty appears. You stop interpreting delay as rejection. In their place arises a quiet authority, an inner steadiness that allows you to continue without drama. This is the posture of men and women who save decades of their lives. Others will notice this change before you do. They will sense that you no longer rush emotionally from one reaction to another. Your speech will become more deliberate. Your decisions will feel firmer. You will appear calmer, not because you know everything, but because you know what governs everything. Some will be drawn to this steadiness. Others may resist it. Neither response should concern you. You are no longer living for reaction. You are living by principle. There will be moments, perhaps many of them, when old habits attempt to reclaim authority. Doubt will whisper. Fatigue will argue. The temptation to abandon persistence will reappear. This does not mean you are failing. It means you are growing. Habits resist replacement. They weaken only when they are consistently ignored. Each time you persist where you once retreated, you reclaim time that would otherwise have been lost, repeating the same cycle. Understand also that hope does not require excitement. Many people confuse hope with enthusiasm and conclude that something is wrong when enthusiasm fades. Enthusiasm is emotional. Hope, as you are now learning it, is structural. It rests on understanding, not mood. It survives boredom. It endures delay. It does not ask permission to exist. The greatest favor you can now do for yourself is to simplify. Simplify your aims, simplify your thinking, simplify your daily actions. Complexity is often a disguise for indecision. Simplicity is the companion of mastery. A single clear purpose, supported by daily discipline, outperforms a dozen vague intentions sustained by emotion alone. You will also discover that rest becomes different. Rest is no longer escape. It becomes renewal. A directed mind rests without guilt because it knows where it is going. An undirected mind rests anxiously because it is trying to escape itself. This difference alone restores enormous energy and prevents years of quiet exhaustion. If you ever find yourself asking whether these principles truly work, look not at theory, but at history. Every enduring achievement was built upon them. The names change, the circumstances differ, the laws do not. Men who understood and applied them early saved years. Men who learned them late often wish they had known sooner. You now stand in possession of knowledge that most people acquire only after time has passed. Do not make the mistake of believing that knowing is enough. Knowledge unused is merely ornament. Wisdom is knowledge practiced under pressure. Begin where you are, act where you stand, correct as you go. There is no other path that conserves time more effectively. From this moment forward, refuse to dramatize difficulty. Difficulty is common. Direction is rare. Be rare. Refuse to indulge in emotional reaction when reason will serve you better. Refuse to abandon purpose when persistence will carry you through. Refuse to fight life when intelligent cooperation will move you forward faster and with less waste. Hope built in this way does not need constant reassurance. It becomes self-sustaining. It draws strength from structure rather than circumstance. It does not collapse when conditions darken because it was never dependent on light alone. One day, perhaps years from now, you will look back at this period and recognize it not as the time when hope was lost, but as the time when hope was rebuilt correctly. You will see clearly how many years were saved because you learned to think deliberately instead of emotionally, to persist intelligently instead of desperately, and to cooperate with life instead of resisting it. That realization will be quiet. It will not demand applause. It will feel like peace. And peace, earned through self-command, is the final proof that hope has become permanent.